Welcome to Access Asia with me, Jenny Shin. Here are the stories we're covering for you on this edition. Tensions between Tokyo and Beijing continue to escalate over Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's comment on Taiwan. Beijing suspending Japanese seafood imports and cancelling Japan-bound flights in response. Toxic air pollution in the Indian capital forces schools to close and draws hundreds of protesters to the streets for weeks. Angry residents say the government has not done enough to address the crisis. And in China, a military-style boot camp for children to keep them away from phones and computer screens, amid rising concerns around the amount of time the youth spend online. But first, diplomatic tensions between China and Japan are still running high as their row continues. The conflict began with Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's comment earlier this month that Japan could respond militarily if China attacked Taiwan. But what began as a war of words has now gone beyond barbs. China has cancelled some 500,000 Japan-bound flights and has announced it will ban imports of Japanese seafood. It's even postponed the releases of at least 2 Japanese movies over the spat. Well, let's get some analysis on that now with Dr. James D.J. Brown, professor at Temple University in Japan. James, great to have you with us on the program today. Just 3 weeks ago, Sanae Takaichi was, shaking hands with Xi Jinping, but since then, the brief honeymoon period, if you will, fell apart. Would you say we're seeing the start of an openly hostile relationship between Japan and China?
Well, for the time being, certainly. But I want to point out that we've been here before. There were similar situations in 2010. 2012. And on those occasions, the two sides were able to, after a period of hostile kind of exchanges, were able to put these issues aside and get back to not a friendly relationship, but at least one that some of the heat had been taken out of. So what we're waiting to see now is if the situation will be the same. If so, in a few weeks, things will go back to normal. If not, then it could become increasingly worrying.
Now, Takaichi has, declined to retract her remarks. What does it say then about her foreign policy, the fact that she's taken such a strong stance vis-à-vis China so early on in her premiership? I mean, what message is she trying to send here to Beijing, or is she even perhaps trying to appeal to her support base at home?
I think in a way she's just been too honest. That what she has said is that if there were to be the use of force against Taiwan, if there were to be a blockade, then that would be a very serious security situation for Japan. And the implied bit is, well, and in those circumstances, it would be possible that Japan could enact its right to engage in collective self-defense. So that's actually been the position of Japan for a very long time. What's changed is that most Japanese leaders have been evasive. That's been the underlying position, but they've avoided saying it publicly. The fact that when she was asked in Parliament about this, she responded honestly and clearly, that's what's led to this approach. So I don't think it's that she wanted a sort of crisis here. She was asked a question and she answered it.
Now, Beijing has, of course, vowed time and time again to take control of Taiwan by force if necessary. But in the context of tensions with Tokyo, does that make escalation in Taiwan more or less likely?
Well, it all depends on the Chinese side. It all depends on Beijing. I mean, in Tokyo, the real worry is, as it is for others, is it depends on the decision of one individual, President Xi Jinping. And of course, he's well known to have said to the Chinese military to prepare to be ready, if necessary, in 2027. Now, that's not to say that the Chinese leadership is going to move on Taiwan in 2027, but it certainly makes the Japanese side nervous, and they would be remiss if they were not to prepare for all eventualities. So that's what Japan's doing.
So the spat also touches upon, the complex history between the two countries. There's the animosity that, stems from Japanese aggression in World War II. But even since then, they haven't always seen eye to eye. How much of that history plays into what we're seeing today?
Oh, very much so. And that's actually been noticeable in some of the Chinese side's responses, suggesting that it's Japan going back to its aggressive old ways, suggesting almost that Japan's, threatening Taiwan, which of course is not the case. So absolutely, the history of Japanese imperialism, colonization and the atrocities that were committed is why so much of the Chinese population is almost willing to believe the worst of its neighbor. Japan these days is a very peaceful country, but because of that history, there is the tendency to assume that Japan could go back to its bad old ways.
And is there a risk that this will go beyond a war of words? How do you see the situation evolving from here on in?
I'm still hopeful, actually. The Japanese side in particular has shown a keen willingness to de-escalate. They sent a member of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to China to meet with a counterpart to try and communicate that Japan doesn't want a crisis. In addition, the Prime Minister has indicated that in future she will be perhaps a little bit less explicit. But the problem is the Chinese side are not satisfied with that. They want her to retract her statement. And I think it's very unlikely that she will do that. As I say, she's not really said anything that is untrue. It's not really a change in Japan's position. And if she were to retract the statement, she would immediately look very weak within Japan. And the fear would be in Japan that that might encourage China to push its neighbor around in the future as well.
All right, James DJ Brown, professor at Temple University in Japan. Great to hear your analysis. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today.
Thank you.
Well, to India next, where schools have cancelled all outdoor activities for children as the air quality has deteriorated even more in recent days. It comes after protesters earlier this month denounced the government for its lack of action, pushing the city to unlivable standards. India has the largest pollution-related death toll in any country in the world, with scientists attributing millions of deaths to poor air quality in recent years. Olivia Salazar-Winspear has this report for us.
A dense and hazy fog that's suffocating Delhi's residents. Air quality in the Indian capital has been deemed severe for weeks now. That is, 30 times the safe limit set by the WHO. The conditions are caused by heavy traffic, industry, and the slash-and-burn agriculture practiced by local farmers. The smoke generated by Diwali fireworks at this time of year also contributes to the toxic smog. Protesters gathered earlier this month, calling on the government to do more to ensure the air is safe to breathe, but the demo was broken up swiftly by police.
It's crucial that we speak out because the air we breathe has become so polluted that it's impossible to live here. If we don't speak out now, when will we?
Authorities have been testing measures like so-called cloud seeding to induce artificial rain. But activists say these efforts are too little, too late.
Whether it's this government or even the previous government, they have always liked to kind of, concentrate on first creating pollution and then cleaning it. And that is not the way to clean air. Clean air will only be when you are actually curbing the emissions right at the source.
Indeed, when it comes to cutting down emissions and adopting greener solutions, India is struggling to reach its renewable energy targets for 2030. While solar power should be a guaranteed solution, the smog particles have even settled on the panels, blocking the sun's rays.
You can see that we are hardly getting any direct solar radiation. So today, probably, we are losing almost 60–70% of the available energy, or maybe more than that.
Authorities in Delhi from the BJP ruling party have imposed construction bans and restricted diesel generators. Yet many fear these measures will be seasonal, unlike the city's smog, which is becoming a year-round phenomenon.
Now, it's a common sight nowadays to see students glued to their screens. While in China, faced with a scourge of screens, the country has been proposing a radical solution in the form of rehabilitation centres, where children no longer have access to their phones, computers and video games. The program, lasting several months, includes classes, sports and a great deal of discipline.
a radical approach to life without screens. These pupils do the same exercise every morning. They're aged between 9 and 17 and follow instructions to the letter. Home to 200 boys and girls who've been cut off from their families, this boarding school is state-approved and teaches a traditional curriculum. Chinese class, reciting poetry. There's one major goal: to keep them off the internet.
Before, I used to play video games for about 8 hours a day, often until 2 or 3 in the morning. My father promised he would never send me to a place like this, so I'm really disappointed that he did.
Pupils stay here for 8 months on average. There are no phones allowed and sports are compulsory, even when it's 36 degrees Celsius. In the classroom, teachers remind them that spending time online prevents them from forming meaningful relationships, and some of the students agree. Hao Yun, aged 14, has been here for several months.
When I arrived, I couldn't eat or sleep, but today I'm quite happy.
Many here grew up as only children, part of a generation less familiar with living in a community. Here, with 20 beds to a dorm and strict rules on tidiness and punctuality, it's a radical change.
Before at home, I used to play online until 6 in the morning. Then I would sleep until noon, but sometimes I would even stay in front of my computer for 48 hours.
This mother's come to meet the headmaster, hoping for a solution for her 14-year-old son.
I'm at my wit's end. This closed environment will be good for him. It'll be better than him being glued to his phone.
With fees of €700 per month, the family's hoping the school can tackle his addiction.
I was the one who wanted to come here. My school results were terrible and my parents were worried. We visited several centers. Let's see if I can adapt to this one.
Government directives in China say parents are supposed to limit their children's screen time, yet many young people still get round restrictions and end up in institutions like this one.
And that's it for this edition of Access Asia. Thank you for watching.